Please go with me to Kings 1, chapter 11, verses 1 through 9. The subject is Solomon's wives. King Solomon, however, loved many fortune women besides Pharaoh's daughter, Mobit, Amarnes, Ebites, Sinai, Hades. They were all from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, "You must not intermarry with, because they will surely turn your heart after the other gods." Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love, and he had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. And his wife led him astray. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David, his father, had been. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of Sinai, and Malik, the detestable gods of the Amarnes. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and he did not follow the Lord completely as David, his father, had done. On, on the hill east of Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Chisma, the detestable gods of Moab, and for Malik, the detestable gods of Amarnes. He did the same for all his fortune wives who burned incense and offered sacrifices to their gods. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who appeared to him twice. As we go on verse 2, although Solomon had clear instructions from God not to marry women from foreign nations, he chose to disregard God's command. He married not one, but many foreign women who subsequently led him away from God. God knows our strengths and weaknesses, and his commands are always for our good. When people ignore God's command, negative consequences result. It is not enough to know God's word or even to believe. We must follow it and apply it to the way we live and our decisions. Take God's command seriously and make your closest allies those who are also striving to follow God like Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived. We are not as strong as we may think. Um, Verse 3, for all his wisdom, Solomon had great flaws. He could not say no to compromising his character or to lustful desires. Whether he married to strengthen political allies or to gain personal pleasures, these fortune wives led him into idolatry. You may have strong faith, but you also have areas of weakness, and that is where temptation usually strikes. Ask God to show you how your weaknesses have led you to dishonor him, and let him strengthen your faith so that you will not be able to defeat against outside attack. Solomon handled great pressure in running the government, but he could not handle the pressure from his wives, who wanted him to worship their gods. In marriage, close friendship, and difficult resist pleasure, compromise our love leads us to identify with the desires of those we care about. Faced with such pressure, Solomon at first resisted maintaining pure faith. Then he began to tolerate more widespread practice of idolatry. Finally, he became involved in idolatrous worship himself, rationalizing away the potential danger to himself to the kingdom. Because we want to please and identify with our loved ones, God warned us not to marry those who do not share our commitment to him. Asherah was a goddess symbolizing fertility, mistress of good ally. And this, Solomon was wise. He was a very wise man, but the devil always finds your weakness. Solomon's weakness was his lustful desires. He had many wives, many concubines, and the only thing that God asked him to do was to not marry pagans, because they would take him away from following God, which they did. He began to start following Malik, the goddess of detestable gods, which that is the goddess, who does sacrifice, incense sacrifices to other gods. So Solomon got strayed away by all these wives he had, by all these concubines he had. He wasn't following God at all. And Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and the Lord was angry that Solomon was now following the god of Malik, who did detestable gods of the Armanis. He did the same for all the forging wives who burned incense and offered sacrifice to their gods. So Solomon started following other gods instead of following the Lord. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. So, in this, Solomon had turned away from the Lord. The Lord could no longer trust Solomon anymore. And in order to save the people, the Lord had now have to get back and save his people. Because Solomon had now followed detestable sacrifices. He had many concubines and many wives that had strayed him away from the Lord. He was no longer doing what he was supposed to be doing for the Lord. So this is what made the Lord angry with Solomon. Another thing is that the Lord had already told Solomon that he could not marry pagans. And Solomon did what he wanted to do anyway. He married many pagans that would set altars on fire. My subject is Solomon's wives. God bless.